Right, and we are live with another episode of Mentor Minutes, just a chance for you to ask questions about leadership, management, any workplace issues that you're dealing with. We can hopefully get some of those obstacles taken care of. This is all about practical application. I will talk about maybe the theory and some of the principles of leadership, but it'll always be in a way to get you over that next hurdle that you're facing. So with that said, and before I get too far into it, tomorrow noon, if it's Friday at noon Pacific Standard Time, it means it's probably a book discussion that I'm going to be going through. This week I was taking a look at Daniel Pink's Drive, so we will be discussing that tomorrow at noon live. So I hope to see you guys there. If you've read the book, love to get your comments, get the little chat going while we're going through things. So while we queue up some viewers here, I know it's been a couple of weeks since I've been on, but as we queue up some viewers, I do have some questions that I've received offline, and if you have questions, drop them down in the comment section. I will get right to them. So first question I have is, what can I do as a leader, but not a direct supervisor of others, to bring a splintered team together? Great question, Mark. Good to see you here. And if you're a leader, and this goes for anybody who is not even in a supervisory role, even if you don't have direct oversight over people, you can just be a colleague. And if you have a splintered team that needs to be brought together, what you want to do is you want to find ways to get them together and communicating. Communication is really the key to building trust. Being able to understand another individual, spend time with another individual is the real key. So what I want you to do in this case is, especially since you don't have direct oversight, you have to navigate this a little bit, but find ways to bring people together. Okay, so you might be working with one individual from this splintered team on a particular project. What I want you to do is I want you to look for excuses to bring other people in to help with particular portions of it, to give their thoughts on how things are working. And that's one of the best ways to do it, actually, is to put together whatever it is that you need to get put together. And maybe this is something that you're working on yourself. And what you do is you bring somebody into the discussion and say, hey, can you look at this for me? I just want to make sure it's right before I send it in. Or I just want to make sure I'm getting another opinion. And maybe you bring in another individual into that discussion. So there's two people now looking at something, and it gives an opportunity for them to share their ideas and have a shared experience. That's what you want to do. If you want to bring a splintered team together, and even if you're in a leadership role and have direct oversight, some of the best ways to do that is to find excuses for bringing people together and foster some communication. All right, so go ahead and experiment with that over the coming week and see how things build. It's a long process. All right, there is no magic button for team building, for bringing the splintered team together, as you say. So look at doing something that's going to be a 3, 4, 5, 6 week plan at bare minimum, and it'll probably take a lot longer than that. But you'll build some momentum over these coming weeks. That's how to really tackle it. Next question I received was, what should you do as a manager when you identify a toxic employee within your team, but in the same time this employee has good technical skills? And that's always the funny part, I want to say, and I put funny in quotation marks, about toxic employees. They are almost always good at their jobs. They get the letter of the law squared away. They understand clearly what the bare minimum is that they need to do, or what good performance is. They get their ducks in a row, and then that leaves them free to spend their energy on toxic behavior. So much of the time, toxic employees are perfectly fine employees from an output standpoint. What you want to do when you have identified that, so realize that this isn't going to be unique. You're going to come across 2 years from now, or hopefully many more years, you're going to come across another toxic employee. And again, they are going to be good technically. They are going to be decent from a performance standpoint. So you have to call out the actual behavior. They hide behind their technical skills and their performance. All right, so you want to call out the particular behavior, so you get specific with it. And so this is going to be more of a coaching sort of thing as opposed to a discipline thing, certainly to start out with. So when you see that toxic behavior, you want to be quick. This is where you want to be really clear with your feedback, okay? Now, feedback loses its importance when it loses its timeliness, when time passes between the incident, and when you're not specific. So when you see the next instance of toxic behavior, I want you to pull the person aside at a reasonable time. You don't want to put them on the spot. Pull them aside and say, hey, just so you know, I noticed how you dealt with Cameron in that particular situation, and I would advise doing something different because Cameron can take it a different way. They will be very defensive. They'll plead ignorance. They don't know what their own behavior is. All of that stuff is going to be very, very typical. So, and yeah, even great performance. That's a perfect way of putting it. Yes, some of your best performers are toxic as well. Great point, Mark. I appreciate you chiming in with that. So bring them in, realize they're going to be defensive, but call out that behavior. All right, and start coaching them. This is what I would prefer you did in that situation. And so you create a conversation around it, and you keep having that conversation. Hey, remember last week when I mentioned how you dealt with Cameron? I just saw that happen again. And so what we want to do is maybe go with this. What are your thoughts about that? So you provide a suggestion. It isn't just that your behavior is bad, you need to fix it. All right, that's not the big issue. The issue is that you want to give them some advice on it and then bring them into discussion. What do you think about this? What are you seeing in regards to it? So it isn't as accusatory as that. It's coaching and it's dialogue with the employee. That's what's really going to help you out. Now, as we've had some more people jump online here, if you have any questions, any struggles that you've been dealing with, drop down in the comment section. I'm happy to tackle those in real time. If you want to keep yourself anonymous, you can always direct message me or email me, cm@CameronMorrissey.com. Just here to talk through some leadership. And as you're coming to this, you may not have any struggles. And some of the things that we talk about may not necessarily resonate. But this is really kind of like leadership exercise for you, talking through some of these issues. Even if you've heard some of them before, exercises that mind, puts you in the right frame of mind. And the idea is that you just get stronger with it. So next question I have is, how do you counsel or talk to someone that always talks over you and has no accountability? So what you do is, again, very similar to this toxic behavior, because talking over somebody can actually be a reference for toxic behavior. So when you have somebody that's talking over to you, what you want to do is you want to, again, start the conversation. Maybe it isn't until after the fact. That's when you can get a word in edgewise. Hey, Cameron, just so you know, I'd appreciate if you'd let me finish my thought. Too many times you're jumping in the middle of it. So, I mean, and what you do is, again, you offer a solution. It isn't just you bringing problems. It is you bringing solutions. Next time, if you want to interject, can you just kind of like, I'll keep an eye on it. You raise your hand and then I'll just, I'll kind of give you the eyeball signal of when I'm ready, done finishing my thought. So just bring it up and then you can start again creating that dialogue. It may be difficult. Oftentimes those people that interrupt and talk over people, it's a very deeply ingrained character trait, but at least bringing it up, you can also, when they start doing it, you can shoot them that glance like, hey, and they will know what you are talking about. So bring it up. Maybe they will self-correct, but it will help the conversation down the road as far as continuing to bring that behavior under control. Again, so much of this stuff, when you see an issue, when you see something, say something, is the kind of cheesy safety placards around offices mentioned. But when you see something, say something. Oftentimes, that's half of it. If you have an issue with somebody, they are likely unaware of it. I say likely unaware of it. So oftentimes you'll be able to address it right away just by calling it out. So that's one of my big takeaways for this particular session. Next question comes in from Tina, and that's, how do you know when those toxic people won't change and they need to go? Great question. Great clarification, Tina. So you open up the conversation. So in toxic behavior, generally, I don't recommend progressive discipline right off the bat. I recommend discussions and coaching. And then after you've done this a few times and you're not seeing any behavior change, then you start formalizing it. So you then start saying, okay, well, now, we're whatever, you wouldn't say it this way, but you move to say a written warning. Hey, just so you know, I'm documenting now. This needs to change. It's having an adverse effect on the workplace. And especially, with all of the talk about, mental health issues and, harassment and that sort of thing, these toxic issues and toxic behavior traits are rising up to the forefront of people's minds. And so you're probably, it's easier to talk about these things now than it's ever been before in the workplace. So Once you've had a few coaching discussions, then start formalizing it and working up the working up the discipline with a performance improvement plan. If your organization doesn't have it, well, now you've just coined the term for it. I'm putting you on a performance improvement plan. We need to address this. And so let's talk through some of the things that we can do, what your thoughts are, what the challenges are that you see. Again, you see, this is collaborative. With discipline, all right, and if you choose to go this route, especially with toxic people, you are in it with them. All right, that's such a key. They are not alone in this. You are taking some responsibility for their performance improvement. A toxic employee can turn around. You'd be surprised sometimes how the ones turn around. These sort of situations often are areas where you can actually deepen the relationship with you that you have with the employee, and it can actually turn out to be a good thing. I know that's crazy to think about, but in some certain percentage of times, it actually comes out where you improve the relationship. But have the coaching discussions if you want to move on to potentially letting them go. Then start with a performance improvement plan after a few coachings. All right. Idadel has the next question. What is the most effective leadership style when dealing with diversified workforce? So, a good question. I'm a huge fan of having a diversified workforce. Really just background. I'm not looking to check demographic boxes necessarily, but I'm looking for a wide background of individuals. So I may take people from different industries where skill sets are somewhat, there's a gray area of overlap between them. I love having more experienced people with lesser experienced people. You know, you have that experience and innovation sort of thing playing out. So I like that a lot. The thing about having that diversified workforce is that it is then beholden upon you to make sure that everybody is communicating with one another and engaging with one another. Where problems arise with a diversified workforce is when they don't understand each other. And so you conquer that understanding through communications. So it's important, more important in those cases, Idadel, that you have, say, daily stand-up meetings where you're talking about what the successes were from yesterday, what the challenges are today, what people are working on, that sort of thing. It's important that you pair people up to work on projects together. It's important that you carve out time for people to have just fun together. And by fun, I don't necessarily mean, some crazy activity. That can simply be a potluck. It can be eating together on Fridays. It can be you bringing in, coffee or donuts in the morning and everybody gather around that. You find ways to bring people together and foster that communication. That's how you deal with the difficulties of a diversified workforce. I love it. It's important, but it is something that takes more effort, which is why oftentimes people don't do it. Leaders don't do it because it does take more effort. They do recognize that, and they're not willing to put forth the effort to get what I would consider much bigger gains from that effort. Great question, Adele. Appreciate it. And if you have any questions out there, drop down in the comments section. I will answer it pretty much in real time. I'm caught up on questions here, so if you have any obstacles you're facing this week, anything that you needed to get done before the weekend and you still haven't gotten it there, let me know what those obstacles and frustrations are, and I'll give a stab at helping you out with it. Next question I received offline was, how do you get started to start employees share their knowledge with other team members, as per spoon feeding other employees will not work. So what you want to do is, if you want to get people talking, and I love getting, in particular, I love getting your superstars together. We tend to spend a lot of time with those that need the most improvement, and we often neglect those superstars. But what I do recommend is getting your superstars together and talk through best practices. So whatever it is that your metrics are, whatever performance is, the question is how you guys all are performing fantastically. How do you do it? And you're going to have to be ready for many, many questions to follow up, because they're going to be, I don't know, I just do it, I work my butt off. Okay, well, what specifically do you? Walk me through your day. Walk me through a sales call. Walk me through an order that you're shipping. All right, walk people through. And what you do is you start sharing the best practices of your superstars, and you're going to find that they don't all have the same ones. All right, so open it up with your best. They'll appreciate the attention, and it will get the ball rolling. All right. The other thing to do is to pair people up. Have a shadowing session where half the day maybe they shadow one of the fellow employee, and the other half of the day they shadow backwards, all right? The goal of that is, what is one thing that you can learn that you can take with you and improve your knowledge, all right? So you put people on the spot in these things, and it may be that it isn't half a day. It may be that it's an hour that somebody, you have time. All right, people say, oh, well, I can't take somebody off the phone for an hour. Baloney. All right, what happens when somebody calls out sick? Well, then that person isn't even there for 8 hours a day. So you can definitely get people to shadow somebody for just an hour and have them reciprocate that. Maybe it's just one person every day. That's 1 hour out of your staff where they can look over their shoulder and look to gain something. That's the goal. That's the purpose. Everybody has to take one thing away. All right, now, I'll follow up with that, because what happens, that sounds all well and good, but then you have somebody that shadows somebody and say, I didn't learn a thing. Okay, well, how did they do this? All right, how did they go through that process? How does that differ from how you do it? All right, what is something that they are great at that you, what is something that they are better at than you? What is something that they are worse at than you? All right, so you dive into it, and what you're doing, yeah, I hate to put the negative spin on that, is you're putting them on the spot and forcing them to learn. They may not be comfortable talking about another person. They may not be comfortable learning even. And this is another thing where you have to be persistent with it. So it may be that next month they sit with somebody else. And over the course of the year, they get with all of their peers, and they've spent at least an hour watching the person and have had them spend an hour watching them. That's how you get people to start sharing ideas, is create a forum with which they can share those ideas. Great question. Love that one. Next one I have is, how do you stay motivated if you work on your own? For example, with no boss. So one of the things about having that autonomy, so even if you do have a boss, but you have an enormous amount of flexibility in your work, you have an enormous amount of autonomy, one of the most important things, certainly for me, since I'm in a situation like that, is to get clear and set your intention on what you need to accomplish that day. What is it? And I'm talking about just 3 things. I think it's Jim Collins that said, if you have more than 3 priorities, you don't have any. So preferably it's just one, but set it with 3 to start out with. What are the things that I need to take care of? So get clear on what your intention is, first and foremost. The second thing is, you want to track your own performance and your own success. Too many times we are waiting for our boss to track our performance and to mention our successes. You can do all of that yourself. So it may be that you start the day and you set your intention on what you want to accomplish. And it may be that at the end of the day you say, okay, well, what did I accomplish? What were my metrics today? What successes did I have? That sort of thing. And so those are 2 of the big things. Be clear on your goal, what you want to take care of, and then track your success. And that tracking becomes your accountability. You will notice when you don't accomplish things, when you do accomplish things, you are referencing that, tracking that, and that's what's going to help you accomplish more and more and more. Next question I have is, how do you motivate a staff that doesn't want to be motivated and are negative? I'm trying to take a look at that. How do you remotivate a staff? Well, first of all, I might actually bring some people in. So a few people that you think would actually give you feedback, and you would simply ask them what the issues are. Too many times we guess what the issue is supposed to be. Oh, well, you know what, if I, do more activities with them, if I, change up the hold music, whatever it happens to be, we guess at what's going to motivate our team. Bring 3 people in and say, hey, I've noticed that the motivation in the team is kind of lacking and people are just a little bit more negative. What's going on out there? So you take a few employees that you think would be happy to give you the feedback, and hey, I'm perfectly content bringing in the biggest malcontent who's going to tell me the straight story on what's going on, and make sure that there isn't something that you can simply address. There can be something constructive to address that's going to turn the team around. So if you have people that are on the negative slide, ask them what is going on and what is causing the demotivation. You can, reword that however you want to see fit. Don't guess, explore, seek to understand as much as possible in regards to that. The other thing is hopefully you get a few things that you can go ahead and address right away and look to turn it around. The next thing is to go ahead and try something small. Start experimenting. What's going to get smiles on people's faces? That's so much of motivation. Smiles, simple things. Is it tracking success, as we mentioned before? Are you tracking success? Are you talking about successes? A trap that leaders often fall into is looking for the mistakes and addressing the mistakes. Those are important, but they need to be balanced with talking about and addressing the successes as well. So talk about those things. What happened yesterday that was great? What happened last week that was great? Are you guys hitting your numbers? Are you meeting budget? Are you having some good sales calls? Are you learning things? What's going on in your department, in the organization as a whole, in other departments? What is going on? What are the successes are? So ask people what's going on if you want to motivate them. See what their suggestions might be, what they see as problems out there, and then start small. Talk about successes and start experimenting with different ways of simply bringing smiles on people's faces, especially if they're negative. That's one thing you can recognize right away, is when people just default to a smile, you know you've got a little something. If they don't, well, then you need to try something else. That's one of the best ways. And if anybody out there has any questions at all, drop down in the comment section. Thrilled to answer your questions for you. Otherwise, I've got a couple more things to get to offline. Oh, the next one is, I have a difficulty speaking in front of people. How do you recommend I deal with that? Love this. Public speaking famously is a greater fear than death for many people. And couple of things. First of all, I'll set a perspective for you. I am very comfortable speaking in front of people. However, or what most people would consider comfortable, I am nervous before speaking in front of large groups. I do it all the time. I do it for a living, but I am nervous every single time. So realize that being nervous isn't something that's probably going to go away no matter how comfortable you are. There was a story told of Henry Fonda, the American actor, who would actually get physically nauseous before going out on stage when he was doing plays and acting in plays. He would get nervous every single time. That was his job. He did it thousands of times, but he was still nervous. The way to get better at public speaking, though, okay, after the perspective issue there, the way to get better at public speaking is to start small and build. So it may be that you bring in a trusted peer at work, a friend at work, or a spouse at home, and you go over the PowerPoint presentation or the report, and you practice with them. Next, you bring in somebody who maybe you're not as familiar with, but is a peer or is safe. A trusted subordinate is perfectly, useful at this point as well, and talk it through with them. Then maybe practice in the morning meeting where you've got 5 people around you. Then practice in a more formal setting. And so you see, we're just building. Okay? Start with 1 or 2. Start with a topic you're familiar with. Then move into areas you're less familiar with. You just build. And that's how you get better at public speaking. Very, very simple. You don't have to be naturally gregarious. You don't have to be a natural performer. You just need a little bit of practice to get 95% of the message across. Next question comes in from Marcia, and it's, what's going on when a manager doesn't get things done that his boss's boss asks? What is it I do it my way? Okay. So couple, I'm trying to kind of get that. I think we're losing a little something in translation there. One of the big issues when you see that an employee is not getting done what you give them to do. Let's go with that route with it. All right. So you give an employee a task and they are not getting it finished. One of the big issues with that is you haven't assessed priority and you haven't given them enough context. It is the why, the reason for something. All right. So I need you to get this report done because I'm giving it to a very important client at noon. This is, one of those clients that could be something big, for the organization. You give them a reason, and it doesn't have to be a huge, big, drawn out reason. When I talk about giving the why, and I love this for even small and menial tasks that you give out, because it reinforces trust and it reinforces their understanding of that issue and where it all fits in, which has all kinds of different benefits. But it can simply be, I need you to do this because blank, whatever the reason is. It's a sentence fragment. All right, now there might be conversations that come up afterwards, but it starts out very simply. So I'd really address the why in regards to that. Now, if they want to do it their way, or if you see somebody that's doing things differently than how you would prefer them to be done, ask them, how I need you to do this. How do you think you would go about doing that? Ask them first before you tell them how you would do it. Okay, so bring them into the discussion. You may learn something. That's one of the big things. You may learn that there is a better way to do this. All right, so that's how I would tackle it, is with the why. If you find that people aren't doing what you want them to do, be sure that they're clear on why you're asking them to do it. Emab has the next one for us, and it's what leadership style should be used with good performers affected by personal matters and become low performers. What you want to do in these cases is you've recognized that it's a personal matter. So it's not something that they are surprised about. So you bring them in and say, hey, Cameron, I know that you've been dealing with some struggles here, and just so you know, it's reflected in your performance. We've seen it go like this. I just wanted to talk through maybe a few simple things that we can do to level that off and hopefully get back to where we were before. And so you talk through them and look to do 1, 2, 3 things. If they were a great performer before, they have all kinds of abilities that just need to be tapped into and maybe crystallized. A lot of times when we deal with personal situations with employees, or just personally, what happens is our mind just kind of fogs a little bit. We lose a little bit of focus because we have something in the background that we're always dealing with. So bring some of these things to focus, just a few simple things. Have that discussion with them, and hopefully that's something that can turn them around, Bob. Let me know if that's not something that makes sense. And if anybody has any questions on anything that I say, drop down in the comment section. I have no problem reiterating things or talking through things or changing the way that I'd approach something if you've got some more feedback for me. The next question comes in from Twitter, and it's, can you help me in finding references about value management? And this is where I'll field pretty much every question that's on here. No, I'm not sure what is referenced necessarily by value management. That can be monetary value. That can be values as far as core values are concerned. So I don't know any references necessarily in regards to value management. I'd simply do a Google search on it, and it might be books on value management, and see what comes up on there. Don't have any recommendations right now, but thanks for the question. Next one that I have, and it's actually the last question I have from offline. So if you have any questions, now's your chance. Drop down in the comments. Ask me about any obstacles, frustrations, or issues you're dealing with at work. Happy to give my 2 cents on that. Next question comes in is, how do you interact with team members challenging my authority as a sales manager despite being understanding and flexible? So how do you deal with people challenging your authority? I'm going to reference kind of what I was talking about before, and that is the why. All right. So this is one of those things where you give the reason behind your decision. I'm just kind of reiterating that. So you can be flexible with how other people want to do things. You can be understanding in what their opinions are. But what you want to do is make sure that you are clearly reiterating your reason and your why behind things. And asking them if they have any questions. Create that dialogue. What happens in so many cases, and I see this happen a lot with very young leaders who are managing perhaps way more experienced people. You have somebody that has a couple of years with the company that gets promoted into a leadership role, and they're dealing with a whole bunch of people that have been in their jobs for 20 years. And what happens is you're trying to earn that respect. And the best way to earn that respect, the best way to assert that authority is by having logic and reasons behind your decisions and behind your actions. So you volunteer it. Hey, just so you know, we're doing this and this and this because of this. All right, so give the reason, give them an understanding. Don't just be flexible and understanding yourself. That's important, don't get me wrong. But you want to encourage their understanding and invest in them as much as possible. Also, don't be afraid to ask them the question. Hey, we're struggling right now with upsells. What are your thoughts in regards to that? How could we improve? So you bring them, you show them respect to get respect. Don't be afraid to do that. If you have logic and reason behind your decisions, then you shouldn't be afraid of it. I was, late in my career, I could move very confidently into the gray areas of empowerment at my job because I was clear on what the reasoning was behind the decisions that I was making in that area, and I was confident that they were aligning with the core principles, values, and history of decision making within that company. So get clear on your why. Communicate that why, and don't be afraid to bring them into a discussion. Showing that respect often gets returned to you in more respect. So with that said, I've cleared out kind of the questions for today. If anybody does come to this late and has some questions, drop down in the comments. I always check prior episodes to see if there's something, and I'll get them on the next episode of Mentor Minutes, or you can always email me, direct message me, and I'm happy to field those questions there, and again, get them on the next episode. So great to see everybody again. Again, I hope you guys will tune in tomorrow, noon Pacific Standard Time. I'll be talking about Drive by Daniel Pink, and hopefully we'll have some good stuff coming out of that discussion as well. Everybody take care out there, and I will talk to you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.